David, it's exciting to have you here with me on this live event. This is the first time we've done something like this, so there are a few glitches we're experiencing. So hopefully we can get LinkedIn Live going, and if not, hopefully we can get everybody over to the YouTube Live. But first of all, tell us how you're to Portugal.
Hey Peter, I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Unfortunately, I'm still getting that echo. Is there anything you can do on your side because it's gonna bother me?
Sure, sure.
Trying
I'm
to
gonna
figure
try
that
my
out.
best, man. I'm gonna try to figure it out. But I'm sorry. What? Yes, you mute because we need to be able to talk to each other. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe I'm not really sure what to do on that end. My speakers are my headphones, so it's not that. David, you're going through your speakers, right?
Yes. Do you have a window for YouTube open? Can you
No, I
turn
do
and close
not.
that?
No, I do
No,
not.
no. Okay. I'm not sure
Just,
what's happening.
just I'm not sure what's going on with that either because I'm not even hearing. I'm not even hearing your echo. I'm in my headphones, so.
All I can think to do is try to reload.
Yeah, maybe you could jump off and jump back on, and we'll just see how that goes. You're on a Chrome browser, of course. Okay. We'll have you jump back off and jump back on. And apologies to anybody who is joining us. We're running into some technical difficulties here, but we're hoping to get things squared away here pretty soon.
Hello again.
Hey,
Still hearing it, unfortunately.
Okay, let's get the echo cancellation going on yours though, because it's probably not on. Can't change this while recording. I'm gonna stop recording for a second. Do you have a different pair of headphones if you need to jump on a different pair of headphones somehow? It could be the fact that your headphones are pretty.
Well, I don't think so, but I can try.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying. We can do, and if not, we just have to be okay with the echo, I think, because we're live. So. Okay. All right, so we are live on YouTube, and we are joined by Empire. Unfortunately, we're dealing with a few technical difficulties. Yeah, okay. So I don't have anything on LinkedIn Live, and I think maybe you're going to need to go on LinkedIn and tell people that they need to come to YouTube. No, babe, there's no echo, and we're live. Okay, so
good now. Sorry
cool.
about that, Peter. Glad that we figured that out.
That's okay, man. You know what? Because it shows a little bit of okay. First of all, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you have to be willing to go with the flow, and it can be a little frustrating. So for anybody who's tuning in, I hope that you bear with us on that. And I hope that the YouTube Live is still going. But let's do some quick introductions, and hopefully some people are able to jump on and ask us some questions. So, for Peter Kirsten, Peter, which is a podcast for entrepreneurs, artists, digital nomads, and people seeking personal growth. David McNeill here is with me, and he is joining us from Porto, Portugal, and he is Expat Empire. David, tell us a little bit about Expat Empire and you, so that for anybody jumping on, they can know, kind of get an idea of what it is we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much again, Peter, for having me on, as well as being on the podcast the last couple of weeks. I definitely appreciate that. It was great having you on the Expat Empire podcast a few months ago as well. But yeah, I'm David. I'm originally from the US. I moved abroad more permanently in 2014, first to Japan and Tokyo for 2 years. Then I moved to Berlin, Germany for 3 years, and now I've been in Porto, Portugal for the last 2.5 years. And as you said, I started Expat Empire back in 2018 to help more people move abroad and live and work abroad. And basically, we help people do that through our content. So we put out the Expat Empire podcast, like I mentioned, as well as a lot of blog posts, books, courses, and things like that. And then we also help people in a more hands-on fashion with our consulting services. So we can help people think through their options as far as how they can start doing remote work, for example, what countries or cities they might want to move to, what steps they have to take to get settled into those places, and a couple other services as well, in addition to our partners that help with people in terms of helping them on the ground. So the immigration lawyers, the tax accountants, the people helping you move your items, ship your pets, all of the stuff that it takes to really go abroad. So we try to help people no matter where they want to move to, at any point in their journey. We try to sort of have some services that can help them throughout the process, and happy to talk about that and my experiences on our chat today.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of different things that I'd love to talk with you about, just in a general sense. And we're hoping also that some people join us on the YouTube Live and LinkedIn if we can get it going, to ask specific questions. So if you're joining us, please drop your questions in the chat box and let us know what it is you'd like to hear from us. But the couple things that stand out to me here, there's so much that goes into moving abroad, and some people, well, is it really worth all of the headaches? So from your own personal experience and with the work that you're doing, I'd like to look at it from this lens. Considering how globalized the world is today, what do you think the benefit is of living and working in another country?
That is a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly changed since I started my journey. Like I said, it really started for me, I guess I'd say in 2013 with a couple months in Beijing, working for a company in San Francisco, but getting to work there for a few months, and then moving in 2014 to Japan. So I feel like now the world is in a very different place, and obviously coming out of the pandemic and everything that's changed with remote work and all of that. So there's, I think, a lot more globalization going on, more opportunities for that, and people are rethinking their relationship to work and where they want to live and how those different factors intertwine, whether they intersect or they don't. And so, it's an opportunity for people to take a step back and look at all of that, and that's an exciting place for us to be in and be able to help people with those decisions. But I would say for me, I mean, the thing that really has been driving me to start Expat Empire and to keep it going for the last couple of years and hopefully far into the future is really just knowing how it's changed my life so much. I mean, the amount of personal development that I've seen out of that, and the feeling, just this overarching feeling of self-sufficiency that you can have and that you can overcome a lot of big challenges and difficult obstacles, you can achieve your goals and dreams. That's something that it's really, made me so passionate about it, and something that stayed with me over the years. So being able to help other people do the same thing, especially, or let's say, taking advantage of this new context, to be able to even take that to the next level and help people think about doing it in ways that weren't even possible before is super exciting. I mean, for me, it was always, how do I continue my career in another country? How do I live in Japan but do something that I'm excited about and want to do, or in Berlin or here in Porto, for example. So all of those moves for me were finding a local job. But now with remote work, digital nomad visas, all kinds of different opportunities for people to live and work abroad, it's really changed that context a lot. So of course, it's great if people want to find local jobs, and that's a great way to do it. But also people are looking into other ways of working remotely, starting their own businesses, becoming creators of content and all different types of products and services. So it's a really exciting time, and I'm looking forward to seeing how things shake out here in 2022 and in the next couple of years, because I think it's going to continue to change quite a bit.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And, it's personally, in my own experience, I would say my international experience has been one of the strongest aspects of my resume, because there's a lot of different things you have to be able to overcome when you are living in another country. There's all the obstacles to getting there, whether it's the visa or, like you said, getting your dogs, your pets over there, or finding housing, and even having an employer like you enough that they want to pay for your visa. I feel like there's something about that speaks a lot to the candidate. Even if you do end up moving back to your home country afterwards, there's something really, really valuable about that. But it is a lot. It is a lot to pick up and move to another country. So part of what, in a general sense, to talk about today is, hasn't necessarily, that's what are the should make them really go, man, actually happier to live overseas and do a job might be really good for me. Is there anything in particular that springs to mind in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking about working abroad in any kind of context, I mean, so much of it comes down to what are you going to be doing there, and is that going to make you happy? Is that something you're going to be passionate about? Or is purely living or being in that place, being abroad, is that the thing that's going to give you the joy? I think it's a really important question, because for me at first I thought all I need to do is live abroad and I'll be able to do, I wanted to do something in my career, but I was kind of more open
Sure.
as far as like, I can get through my 40 whatever hour work week, and as long as I'm there I can enjoy nights and weekends and all of that. And I actually had an opportunity. Uh, I was offered the chance at the bank that I worked for when I first came out of university. I started working in investment banking as an analyst, and even when I was there, this was in the U.S., but even when I was there, I was so interested in living and working abroad. I was dreaming about it in my cubicle, and I was definitely not your typical investment banking analyst, I guess. But I had this opportunity to actually try to move to the London office, a very small office of the bank. It was really a US-centric bank, but they had some small international presence in London and Hong Kong. So I was reaching out to those managing directors and trying to make it happen. It just so happened that there was an analyst position that opened in the London office, and I thought this is going to be awesome. Let me talk to the associate, let me see how it is, and what I can expect from the experience. And what I found out from the conversation was that actually I spoke to the analyst that was going to be leaving that position and moving to the Hong Kong office, which they just opened. So I was talking to the person I would be replacing, and he told me, well, the managing director and the director, which is basically the three of them. So the analyst, the managing director, and the director. So the two senior people are basically always traveling all over Europe, and he might get to a little bit as an analyst, but basically he's normally stuck back in the office in London. He's the person who stays the latest, who has to turn off the lights when he leaves. He's like eating dinner in the office alone. And when I heard that, I was like, I don't know if that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I actually turned down that opportunity. So I think it's really important for people to think about what it is that they want to be doing and how they can do that in an international context. So for me, it became moved from finance to product management. And then it was like, how can I work for tech companies and do product management in other countries? And it was really a great stepping stone for me. It wasn't something I planned from the beginning, but it was something that I could leverage in an international context with in work environments that spoke English. And so it was a great way for me to do that. But I personally, I was never really that interested in being a teacher myself. I think it's a great route. I know a lot of people do it. I know that's the route that you're on. So I
Sure.
certainly have nothing negative to say about it. It just wasn't something that I thought I would be really excited or happy to do in those places. And I knew how important it was for me to find that meaning in my work as well. So just for people who are thinking about it for a year, if you're just thinking about a year and backpacking around and picking up some shifts at a bar or a hostel, that's one experience. Another one is getting a working holiday visa and living in one country and trying to find some work there or doing some studies. You could always get a study visa, student visa as well.
Sure.
But if you're really trying to find a job, then of course you have opportunities like teaching English or other subjects as well. You could work at international schools. You could, if you're good in the language, you could do some sort of translation or interpreting. There's a ton of different options. But if you want to find that sort of long-term career, and if that's what you want to grow, then maybe trying to find those skill sets first that you want to be able to leverage in those international contexts, get them to a good place where they're going to be interesting to those international hiring managers in those countries, and then really trying to find a job there through networking, through applying to tons of positions, through getting any in that you can, because it's going to be difficult from doing that abroad. And if you have the opportunity, if you have the finances and the situation allows, what I recommend to a lot of people is to go there for a couple of weeks and just fill your calendar with coffee dates, with networking, with interviews, with meetups, with networking events, whatever you can find, just to try to really show that you're serious about being there. Because if you're in town, it's going to be so much easier for them to set up an interview, for example. Then of course they can do it online as well, but they're just maybe not as sure that you're really as committed. It shows a different level of commitment if you're willing to go there. So there's so many different ways that you can approach it, but I think ultimately it depends on your goals in terms of your career and where you want to be. If you want to be more stationary, if you're more long-term or just a year, there's so many questions to that, but maybe those are a few ideas of places to start.
Yes, no, and it certainly gets the wheels turning a little bit for me too, because it's interesting. You even said, well, you went the teaching route, and that's what worked for you. Well, but to your point earlier as well, like, yes, I went the teaching route, but I do my work is I'm not a teacher by trade. I'm actually a voice
Mhm.
actor by trade. And by going to Korea or in the next couple months to Japan, that's actually working towards a long-term goal I have as well. But what part
Mhm.
of the it's very true is regardless of whether or not you're looking for a short term, like, okay, I just finished college. I'm not sure what I want to do next. I need to explore. Teaching is a really great option for something like that. But even if you're gonna do a move abroad, you should be thinking about what are my skills and talents, what do I want to add to my CV, so to speak, so that when I move to something else, whether it's in this country or some other place, that is a beneficial aspect instead of just like a blip on the radar that's something different, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting. It kind of speaks a little bit to, I've gotten a chance a little bit. Even you are someone who likes to know, have a plan, you're organized,
Mhm.
and it makes a lot of sense that you would think that way. And for me, it probably would be a little bit easier for someone like me to go, okay, I want to live in Spain, so I'm going to
Mhm.
just show up on vacation and then I'm going to look around. But I would imagine for someone like you, there's plenty of people who want to live abroad who are still like to have that kind of, they're going to want to have a plan set out. So I think I
Mhm.
appreciate as well that you're mentioning, like, employers are going to feel like you're more invested if you show up, but also like you understand, like that's would be a lot to just show up. You have to have a plan set in place.
Mhm.
um so yeah, so
Yeah. I mean,
I want.
there's definitely plenty of routes, just to be clear. There's plenty of routes, but it's just, I think it's a matter of having a strategy in a sense of like, do you know what and your strategy could be just, I'm going to take a vacation and go and check it out and see what happens. That's also a strategy, might not be as thoroughly planned out, but, that's not to
Sure.
say I think my point is that there's not any one way to do it, but if you do have a certain goal of a certain type of role, a certain type of company, in a certain country, then I think, probably planning a
Yes.
little bit more around that might make sense. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Especially in the sense that, like, if like if your desire is first, like it's a priority list, right? So it's like, I really want to live abroad. If that's like your desire for
Mhm.
some specific reason, then you can base everything else off of that, right? Versus if it's
Right.
like, I want a really good job abroad. Okay, now you need to make sure that the job you're getting is really the right job and it's somewhere abroad, right? So
Right.
understanding what that priority list is. Now, for example, you and I spoke earlier on the podcast and just before this live recording about a little bit of the differences between your time in Japan and what I may or may not experience there, right? So,
Hmm.
living in Tokyo is nothing like living in the countryside of Japan, I'm
Hmm.
sure. And I've noticed, at least with some of the expats I hear who are desire to teach in another country, they are very, very specific. Like, I don't want to be there. I do want to be
Hmm.
there. You're going to have a lot harder time finding the perfect position if you,
Sure.
doesn't mean you can't find it, but that's where that list we talked about comes in as well. And it's
Right.
probably where something like Expat Empire is really valuable. So, I wonder if it's a little bit on, like, it's very specific to the person, but for example, you work with people in Japan, you work with people in Portugal. How do you make those networking decisions and partnerships
Hmm.
to provide services for somebody who, I don't know, in Bulgaria versus England versus South Korea, because that's a pretty wide net you
Yeah.
have to cover.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's a great point because I think it's a differentiator for what we do versus a lot of other companies out there which focus on a certain geography or especially a certain country, even some a certain city. So with us trying to help people moving from anywhere to anywhere, it's a huge span of the world. That's the entire world to be able to cover. And as a result, it can, at least on a marketing front, it can spread us a little bit thin. It's not as easy as just saying, let's just
Yes.
spam that Facebook group that's focused on Tokyo or something, right? So,
Yeah.
it definitely poses plenty of its own challenges. But as far as our services are concerned, so we do try to help anyone move anywhere. And basically the way that we work is that we will do the research part that we'll do is, of course, personalizing our service to the specific needs of our clients in terms of what they're looking for. We have a set of services that is very standard, sort of a standard set of services, but we do try to adjust those and personalize those services as much as we can to the needs of the client. For example, if they're trying to find a job in Germany versus Italy versus, I don't know, Netherlands or anywhere else in the world, then we will adjust that accordingly. So basically, we try to look at it more, I would say, on a country by country basis, but then drill down even more into, for example, if they're looking for a role in an advertising agency versus an IT, developer position versus an architect or something, we adjust those as well. So that's how we do it at a very high level in terms of our services. In terms of the partnerships, though, that you mentioned, so for example, like it really depends, but with Japan, so I worked with a company there, or I should say the company that sponsored my visa that I worked for in Japan. They connected me with this relocation services company, and the guy, the representative, the person who was overseeing my relocation, came to meet me at the airport and, get me set up with a number of viewings of different apartments and help me with the contracting of those, the final apartment that I chose, and getting set up with utilities and all of those different things. So all of those pieces that come with that move and actually making the move and getting settled in there, that's what they helped me with. And ultimately, that was, for example, a relationship where I went back to them now many years later and said, hey, I'm doing this different thing. I have some clients that are interested in moving to Japan. Would love to work with you guys because I had a great experience. So there's some element of the personal experience, but of course that's just a few countries for me as of yet. So the rest of it is really driven by it's a proactive and reactive kind of outreach. So some of it is we know that there are certain countries that we're getting a lot of demand for, or that are just really popular countries for people to move to now. So we'll do a proactive outreach to try to find great partners that we can trust that they'll do a great job for our clients. And a big part of that is just with the outreach, with the meetings that we have with them, with the discussions that we have prior to signing any partnership agreements, we can really see, are they responsive, are they communicative, are they understanding what our clients want and need. And especially when it's individuals versus businesses, you'll see a lot of relocation services companies focus on B2B relocation. So for example, if a Google employee is moving from Ireland to South Korea, whatever it is, then maybe they'll have this relocation management companies and relocation services companies to be able to help manage all of those sort of externally outside of Google. I mean, I'm just giving an example. I don't know if Google, how they do it specifically, but that's really the B2B side, and that's most of the industry. But what we're trying to do is help individuals move. So that's the B2C, business to consumer. And so it's very different type of thinking than just moving a massive number of employees from A to B. This is really about the individuals. I mean, there's always an individual element, but it is definitely a different type of service and expectation around quality and communication and pricing. So we try to basically get all of that in terms of the conversations that we have and the partners that we sign. But in terms of figuring out what countries to cover, I mean, admittedly, we don't have a full, completely stocked every country, every service network, yet set up, but we have focused in on certain key destinations that we're getting more and more, basically we're always talking to our clients, our audience, and seeing where people are moving and where the demand is. So if somebody's thinking about moving somewhere and they want to work with us, but they don't have that relocation services company yet, and we don't have one signed, then we'll do a proactive outreach to try to sign a partner in the destination. And basically it helps that person not have to reach out to 5, 10, 20 different relocation services companies and see, are they getting back to me? Do these guys understand my needs? All of those types of questions, and to compare pricing as well. So that's really where our partner network comes in and how we try to grow it.
How do you go about deciding what countries to focus on building actual partnerships with? Is it because I already have some connections there and I'll try to see who's a good fit? Or is it, what, this is a trend, a lot of people want to go to this place. I've noticed they're asking Singapore or something like that, and I don't have connections in Singapore, so find a connection. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I would say largely at this point, we've kind of gone through our own network of contacts and people that we know directly from personal experience. It's a relatively small number given how many countries that we can realistically live in. But It's really more of, yeah, it's really driven by what people are asking about. I mean, you said Singapore. We had a couple people the other week asking about Singapore, so it's already on my radar as a potential place for us to continue, searching for more partners. And it's sort of an ever evolving, never ending process, because sometimes you find ultimately the partner is too busy and they don't give the clients the type of service that they want, or they don't offer a specific type of service some people just want tax help, for example. Maybe that's something that a more broad-based partner would cover, but sometimes you need a more specialist, and some are just doing real estate. So, just to give some
Sure.
examples, but it's always kind of evolving, and you want to make sure that you're working again with the best people so that you feel confident that you're putting your clients in front of the best possible partners. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it never really ends, but we always just are trying to, grow and improve and build it to a point where we're covering the majority of the places that our clients are interested in moving to.
Sure. I mean, honestly, it seems like just a headache just thinking about how many different elements there are. Because even in one place, there's so many nuances. For example, I'm
Mhm.
preparing to move to Japan in July, and I'm still, I still don't know exactly where. But part of the process for me is okay. My wife is going to be dependent on my visa. Let's make sure that the school, like, that's not assumed that they know that. Let's make sure that they
Mhm.
include her in the visa process. And then there's, okay, the housing situation, what's it going to look like? Because it's not just me, housing in Japan tends to be pretty small. How to make sure that's a big enough
Mhm.
space for my wife and me, and maybe if we want to have someone visit us. And so, and then that's not even getting into, right? Like
Mhm.
in the US and in Japan. So country in one situation, I can imagine that's totally different every
Mhm.
single place. So part of what you're offering seems like to me is not necessarily a total understanding of the one place, but a knowledge of how to go about finding the
Mhm.
answers from the right people, and then knowing what are the potential obstacles that are going to pop up. Because
Right.
I would never have
Right.
known to consider those things until I ran into it myself.
Right, right. I think that's a good way to put it. I guess as I try to explain it to folks, sometimes I'll say what we do in terms of our own services at Expat Empire, our consulting services, is we help people in the planning process. So it's really, I mean, like I mentioned before, it can be coaching. Which is basically kind of a catch-all for any type of extra conversations people want to have, talking through different ideas or problems that they're having. So it's coaching, it's destination comparison, which we can use more data, really data-driven approach to comparing different destinations, cities, or countries if they're not sure where they want to move to or they have multiple ideas. Or in fact, if they just want some suggestions, because some people say, I just want to, move to somewhere in Europe. What do you think? Type of thing, and we can, talk through the
Yeah.
different options. It's those. It's also timeline planning, which is basically all the steps you need to take to leave your home country and then get settled in the first year into the new country. And then our international job search services to help people with really strategizing. It's not job placement. It's strategizing around their job search. So how would you go about trying to find a job in Japan versus finding one in
Sure.
Germany, and
Sure.
how would you do that outreach, and what sort of salaries can you expect, and of course also helping with resume and cover letters and LinkedIn profiles and things of that nature. And then the last piece is the remote work roadmap. So that's basically helping people to think about how they can leverage their skills in a more online digital context to start making income online and become digital nomads if they want, or just to start their remote work careers and do some travel, whatever it is that they want to do. So those are our services, whereas the partners is, that's where really where we fully rely on their expertise, their certifications and qualifications, their expertise in that market. Of course, we do that research for some of the other services, like I mentioned, but what we tell our clients is, look, we're not the immigration lawyers, we're not the tax accountants. Even
Sure.
if somebody's moving right here to Porto, Portugal, I'm not going to go and find them an apartment. Like, that's really what I want to rely on, the
Yeah.
people who know the market day in and day
Right.
out. They also speak the language better than I do. They're going to know, they're going to have the connections. That's really their bread and butter. So that's where the overlap is, and it's kind of like ours tends to be more in the planning process before the move. Not exclusively, but tends to be. And
Sure.
then the partners is more about the few months leading up to the move, and of course making that happen, and then the months afterward as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It gives people a better overview of like, okay, so if I'm just considering that here's what I could expect from working with Expat Empire, but also like I should be thinking about in general. Because I think
Right.
maybe they would be interested in doing something, except for that seems like such a big, crazy, like intangible thing. In fact, international travel in general, a lot of people, but understanding, okay, you know what, you can have a structure and a timeline and understanding of what is expected of you, and it is a lot of stuff, but when you get an idea, okay, you know what, actually that is interesting. I would maybe want to look into doing that.
Yeah.
So I
I,
think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's been really amazing just to talk to people that are like we get this question so much. I mean, whether it's phrased this way or not, but something similar. But it's like, am I crazy? Is this a crazy idea? Is this a crazy goal? And it's like, no, we're literally talking to people about this every day, every week. We have our own experience doing it. It's not
Yeah.
crazy, and I love just to share that because with people because it's just I think it just there's so many things, so many worries and concerns for good reason, and of course we all have those. But going on in their brain about this idea and what are my parents going to think about it? What is my significant other going to think about it? Can I really quit? Tell my boss I'm quitting or any of these things. And oh, I've always wanted to live in France. Is this crazy? No, I mean, it depends how you try to do it. There are ways that are going to be easier versus harder,
Sure.
or maybe there's sometimes, of course, that it couldn't work out for people. I'm not making any promises, but it's nice to be able to tell people like, this is what we're, hearing about. This is what we're talking about. You're not crazy. This is normal, and we're going to help you to be able to make that happen. And here's the stuff that you need to think about. And I think once you start to break down these big, crazy, sort of quote unquote crazy ideas and dreams into like smaller steps. And yeah, like you said, maybe that comes from my, more operational kind of the way I think about things and the way I approach
Sure.
things. But when if people are open to that, or if they have a similar way of thinking or whatever, then it really can help to break down this big idea into concrete steps. And then it's just like any journey. It's just, taking a step, one step after another. So, um,
Yes.
yeah, we certainly don't, say we're guaranteeing any type of success. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it, but I think just coming at it from an angle of it is, most likely possible. Here's how you could try to do it. We're going to put you in touch with the right people to make it happen. We'll help you through coaching and, whatever, all the different services that we talked about throughout the process. And then, actually having some of those people move now that after COVID and move even here to Portugal, for example, has just been super satisfying, and it's just amazing to see people so excited to be achieving these goals and that we can play a role in it. So yeah,
Yeah.
looking forward to hopefully helping more people do that.
Yeah. No, it's that you have success stories, right? This is not, it's just like a theoretical thing. You have people who have worked with you doing your service and who have been able to make it. And this is a challenging time for you to have started your business too, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not easy to try to sell somebody on
Not
right
easy.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I started in 2018. I started writing basically, this is relevant maybe to people interested in Japan, like yourself. So I started writing my book, Passport to Working in Japan, back in 2017. So that was really the first kind of product, or the first thing, the first inkling of something like this. And then Expat Empire was kind of born out of that and launched officially in 2018. So of course I've been doing it on the side as a side project for a couple of years going into 2020. And then I actually worked at a company that was doing something quite similar to this in terms of like helping people to connect to these relocation services partners. So I was helping them as a senior product manager here in Porto. And then I got laid off right at my 1 year mark. And then it was like, okay, well, I guess that's time for me to do what I was really dreaming about, which even before moving to Portugal, even before that job, when I was in Berlin, I thought, I want to be able to work on Expat Empire while I'm living in Portugal. That was my dream. And it just, November 2020, when I got the layoff news, it was like, okay, well, now's the time to do it. Because I was kind of already thinking about it in the next couple of months. I wasn't sure exactly when, but it really gave me that push off the diving board. And it's just been, yeah, about a year and a half since then. And, a lot of growth and progress, and just super satisfying
Yeah.
experience for me so far. So I guess I thought about it as I was going to use more of 2021. Obviously, you don't know how long the sort of pandemic will continue to be an issue or how it will evolve, but I just thought, okay, that's end of 2020, then, work on it through 2020, end of 2020, and then in 2021, I would just be focusing on growing it in terms of growing awareness, building more content, being on other podcasts, other YouTube channels, just whatever I could do to help just kind of crystallize some of the services, add to that, remove some, just get it in a position to be able to be ready to scale when we come out of this. And so we've seen pretty good growth in 2022 so far. So we'll see where it takes us and where the world goes. But, I'm overall very positive on it. But I also recognize that it's definitely going to be a long-term game. Like, this is not going to be a quick win. It's going to be really
Yes.
putting in the effort over a long period of time, because we're doing something very unique and very different. And the services were built out of my own experience and those of my colleagues, but also the communications and conversations we had with our audience and our clients. So, it's really unique stuff. It's trying to cover the world, but from a very small team, a very small remote team. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting, it's challenging, but I guess, that's what goals are for.
Yeah, no, you did not pick a small one. I admire how ambitious the idea of Expat Empire is, and I'm glad you mentioned your ebook for Japan, because I noticed that recently you released a few other ebooks, and one of the things in particular that I thought was intriguing is that you have a little bit more of a focus on people who are looking to retire as well now too. So I want to talk to you about that, because
Mhm.
even in our podcast interviews we've done on Alone with Peter, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and peterkirsting.com, um, we were really mainly focused to live and work abroad, but retiring is a whole other element. So tell me about those ebooks and that added emphasis of retirement abroad.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I guess the idea was maybe we didn't talk about it much in terms of our previous conversations and interviews, but I always had, retirees as well in mind. I mean, I've certainly worked with plenty in terms of working with Expat Empire, and I just saw a lot of people were interested in moving to other countries, maybe because, I mean, a lot of people are trying to leave, let's say, the U.S. and the healthcare system, and I'm not trying to get into any of this, topic, but
No,
I'm just
understandably
saying,
so, though.
not to. It's just a reality, at least of what we're seeing, is that a lot of people are looking into other options, and
Sure.
at all different ages, and for all different reasons, but. Retirees were always kind of there as part of it as well. So, really, though, with these last ebooks that came out recently, and it's free ebooks if anyone wants to check them out, you can just get them for free on the website, expatempire.com. But it's really, I wanted to focus in on three different, let's say, profiles or types of people, backgrounds. So one is the expat entrepreneur, the expat employee, which is, of course, what we were talking about in terms of our previous conversations. And then we also have digital nomads. So a lot of people, of course, trying to do that these days, the big buzzword, hot topic thing that people are talking about. And then there's also international retirees. So the idea is that this is also just driven from the surveys that we've done with our audience, the conversations that we've had, and everything else. But it's really just seeing most people fall into one of these three buckets. If they're like, there of course are other situations as well, and not everyone neatly falls into one, but usually it sort of just makes it clear to us what type of conversation to have with them, how we can best help, and of course, provide additional advice in terms of these free books, for example, that are focused on these three different areas. And so, that's it. The goal was just to be able to give additional value for free through our site. Of course, people sign up for the newsletter and everything as well as part of that. But, to put that out there and show that, hey, we understand the needs of people like you, and we work with people like you every day. And so hopefully that can give them some free help. And if they, want to have a conversation, we also do the free consultation call as well, where we talk to folks for about 30 minutes, and really just the goal is to hear what they're worried about, what they're thinking about, what their plans are. We give advice if they're open to it, or if they have questions, we're happy to answer those as best as we can. And then also just figure out if it would make sense for us to continue the conversation, some coaching or some of our other services, or connect with our partners as well. So, if we can work together, great. If not, then we just hopefully help somebody out and thinking through their process. And it's just a great way to connect with people.
Sure. I mean, and I personally see the value of the work that you're doing. Having had the conversations I've had with you, I can tell that that it would be valuable at least to have someone start to kind of really get a shape of like, okay, where am I headed with this? And I'd be curious to hear, for example, you said you didn't want to get into when is COVID going to end or whatever, because you never know what the restrictions are going to end. But what has been your feeling the last couple months and moving forward? If you had to project, are you seeing more people looking into this? Are you seeing more possibilities open for people at this point? Just in general or in specific places, you're saying, oh yeah, people are moving here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to give the first context to the situation is that if you try to boil down our typical customer, it's an American moving to Europe. Of course, as I said, we try to help anyone moving anywhere, but that's just most of what we're seeing. It could be biased by a number of things, me being in Portugal, the content being all in English. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but that's what we're personally seeing in terms of our average profile. So that's kind of what we focus on more. But I would say I mean, I'm certainly not qualified to give any forecast in this area, but I would just say,
Sure.
I mean, you never know what the future is going to hold. You never know if there's going to be another outbreak of COVID in terms of another variant or another disease or whatever virus.
If we've learned anything, we just said we don't know anything. I'm certainly not asking you to tell me what's going to happen. I'm just saying, what are you noticing?
Sure.
Like, are you noticing some countries opening their borders more now?
Sure. Yeah. I just wanted to. I always, I like to say those things up front because I think some people come out with their guns blazing and just putting out some big numbers. But I would put it this way, like at least as far as our business, we really did spend most of 2021. I mean, helping people plan and things like that, but really trying to just grow awareness. But then coming into 2022, we had a good month in terms of January. And I thought, well, maybe that was kind of a New Year's resolution type pop or something like that.
Sure.
And then we saw it kind of continuing in February and March and April and coming into May. So for me, it does feel like it's kind of turned a corner. And I was a little concerned as well about, the war in Ukraine, for example, and all of these things.
Yeah.
But I think maybe people reaching out to us had dropped by, a bit for a couple of weeks, but it actually isn't something that people are bringing up in conversation. And I thought maybe that would be more of a conversation topic for some people in terms of their concerns. At least the people who are reaching out, maybe the people who aren't reaching out are more concerned, but the people who are reaching out don't seem to be overly concerned about that in terms of thinking about Europe as a destination, for example. So I think that's kind of all I can say in terms of the people we've been talking to, how the business is going relative to the situation. So I hope that, as more and more countries open up, as it seems like one of those things where, I don't know what'll happen here in Europe in the winter, but I sure hope that it doesn't really close down again. I hope that it's kind of getting to the point where like we're just going to continue in more or less in the way that we have now, which basically across Europe is, you can easily pretty much go anywhere if you have the EU vaccination certificate. Here in Portugal, as of maybe in April, I think it was, or maybe in the end of March, pretty much you only have to wear a mask in places like public transportation. So really it feels like it's kind of returned back to normal. We'll see where the rest of the year takes us, but hopefully we've kind of turned a corner more permanently.
Sure. Yeah, I try to be cautiously optimistic about these. So, as you pointed out before, we really never know how things are going to turn out. But
Sure.
It seems to me that some of these countries really could use the revenue that comes with that tourism or the nomadism or whatever it might be. And I can imagine, for example, Japan has had their borders tightly closed for a very long time, and there's a lot of teachers or business people who just haven't been allowed to come in, even if they were offered a job. until the last maybe 6 months or so. And I always wonder. Sometimes I just go like, you know what? I'm not going to look into it too much because it's going to be different tomorrow. But are you
Right.
keeping the pulse on things like that since you have a close tie to Japan? Are you watching what's happening with that, or?
I mean, to be completely honest with you, I try to stay out of reading any type of news. I really try to stay out of the news cycle. And I mean, I've gotten that question before by other folks, like, you know, but the reality is, like, these things are changing every day. And if I some people, especially here in Portugal, think like, oh, so you help people move to Portugal. It's like, yes, but also plenty of other places. And trying to
Right.
keep on top of where everything is in the world would be a separate full-time job. So for me, it's really about, I mean, warning people about the possibility of those things. I hope at this point that's, not like basically everyone knows that. But
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
like, if someone's looking for how is it, to go to this country or to move over here right now with COVID, I mean, I'm not probably going to be, to be honest, not really going to be prepared with the answer unless it's some of the, coming to Europe or something like that I'm more familiar with, given that I live here.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's something that we could look into further for our clients. I mean, I have some recommendations as far as like different websites and things to check, but beside, I mean, I kind of leave that in those terms because it is changing on such a frequent basis, and it's trying to cover anything more than my own vacations here in Europe is more challenging enough. Yeah,
Oh
so
man. Oh, listen, I totally get it. Like I said, I'm literally gonna move to Japan in July. Fingers crossed, nothing changes on that, right? But I myself have been like, people are asking, oh, well, what's it gonna be like, or what when you arrive, what's gonna be the procedure, blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, I haven't really looked into it because it's going to be different in 2 weeks
mhm.
than it is today. And July is still far enough away that I just don't want to assume.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, it's just, trusting that it's going to work out if it's meant to work out. And
Right.
that can be hard to do. That can be hard to do. But, it's certainly, like you were saying before, it seems like in general, people are preparing for a little more normalcy, and I hope that that continues to be the case for the sake of Expat Empire and for the sake
Me
of
too.
my own couple of year plans. And we got a couple more minutes here, David, but I wonder if you want to spend a little bit of time talking about just a little more personal stuff, just keeping it a little more relaxed.
Sure.
um, I would love to hear about how your summer is going. You've got some plans up. You're telling me before the show started.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, summer's been great here. At least this month. I don't know exactly when the weather sort of turned, but it's basically been practically, day after day of crystal clear blue skies, great sunshine. So I'm super thankful for that. And as I said, the mask requirements and all that stuff reduced a little while ago. So it just feels kind of like a return to a bit of the old days. I mean, hopefully, yeah, it
Yeah,
stays that way, but really thankful for that.
sure.
But yeah, in terms of summer plans, my folks are finally, my mom and dad are finally coming here in a couple weeks, and I mean it's great because they've never seen Portugal. The last time they came, to see us was back when my wife and I got married in Berlin, so that was in June 2019. So
Yeah,
they were supposed to come last fall. Then the reason they didn't was because their flight got changed and or actually canceled. I think the airlines shut down that particular route that they were going to take, and they couldn't find another flight. And so it ended up that we went to see them. My wife and I went to see them in the United States. So that was great. That was last September to October. And so now they're coming here. We're going to show them around here for a couple weeks, and then we're going to go as together to Paris for a week, and my sister will meet us there. So just really, honestly, that's the main thing that I'm kind of focused on right now is just wrapping things up to be able
yeah,
to really focus in on that and, just getting basically the business in an even more better spot to be able to kind of, I mean, I'll still be checking in, I'm sure, but just
sure,
get in a better
sure.
spot to be running kind of on its own. So that's sort of the big goal in terms of kind of preparing for that.
Hey man, you're living in Europe. You got to have that work-life balance. Otherwise, people are gonna look at you weird, right? You can't be too American while you're out there. You got to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, yeah, I mean, I went from the US, which I probably had Well, at least in banking, which I'd done most of before I moved. I did do a year at a job as a product manager, but I was used to sort of two weeks a year, basically, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Japan, and then that was like 10 days a year, so it's even less. And
Sure.
that included sick leave as well. So that was 10 days
Oh my
total.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
there are more public holidays. So I mean, the public holidays. There's quite a few of them in Japan. So
Another reason why I'm teaching there instead of doing like a normal job,
mm.
because teachers are the ones who get the holidays, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. So, try to make the most use of those, but then moving to Germany and getting, I think it was 24 days. And even
Yeah.
if I worked for a Southern German company, it'd probably be 30 days plus more Christian holidays. But I was in Berlin and they don't celebrate some of those. And the minimum, at least, I don't know if German wide, but the minimum in Berlin at least was 24. So most companies offered that. But yeah,
Yeah.
now I mean I've kind of gotten used to that, but at the same time it's very different working for yourself, of course, trying to take that time. And despite doing this all for the freedom of it, I mean, I guess the freedom, it's despite doing it for the freedom, there's still the thing of like, okay, being on top of it, and I'm a very kind of wanting to get stuff done type of person.
Yes.
So I think I'm still balancing those kind of feelings, and maybe that comes from the American side of me, and just in by nature or whatever,
Yeah.
with
Personality.
this new reality. So.
Yeah.
But I think what I really like about it is that I never have to ask somebody if I can take this time, or like coordinate,
Sure.
or oh, if I take over 24 days, then it's going to be a problem. It's like, no,
Sure.
I'll take a few weeks here. And so I think,
Yeah.
yeah, overall it's good, but it's just a matter of like trying to stick to it, and it's more balancing myself out than anything else.
No, I am with you there. My wife and I are planning and preparing for this move to Japan, and that's in and of itself, but we're all both also business owners. The podcast
Mm.
is kind of like a full-time job, even though it's, because it's just me.
Right, right.
And so I oftentimes will find that I'm working weird days or hours, and then my wife is also doing that. And we're like, hey, you know what? We've been working like 7 days this week. Can we not do that next week? And then we're like, yeah, yeah, we both
Mhm.
don't want to do that. And then turn around next week, we're like, man, we're so busy. Why are we doing
Yeah,
this to ourselves? It's true.
yeah,
It's hard as a business owner. It's hard. It's certainly not something I complain about because I enjoy the work that I do, but it's funny how sometimes it takes a change of scene. One of the things I'm really excited about in moving to Japan, I'm kind of hoping that we're a little more rural because it's just going to
mm,
force me to be slower with the way that I do
mm,
things, and just like taking more time and doing more with less. You know what I mean?
hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think being in Tokyo was amazing, but at the same time, I didn't have this Expat Empire or necessarily as many sort of side projects or anything like that at the time. But I think it was just more of I always felt the need to be on the go, and I mean I really like enjoyed every minute of it as best as I could, and I made the best of it, and I was able to leave with no regrets. Like I fully did it in those 2 years. I mean, of course, you can always do more, but I really felt fully satisfied with my time in Japan. But at the same time, like it was just go go go. Like I would find this event going on and go check it out, and then it
Yes.
was just it was a pace that I shouldn't say probably, like I know I couldn't keep up today. So but I think there's a time and place for all of that, and that was a good spot for me to do that in my late 20s, and
Sure, sure.
now
Hey,
now it's more relaxed.
you are not that old yet, okay? So don't give me that. When somebody who's like the same age as me starts to talk about, oh, back when I was younger, I could do this. You're making me go in the same way you are, man. So slow it down.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, it's also life changes, or life stages. It's like, being married
sure.
now as well. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
also why we moved here to Portugal, was just, after I did Tokyo, and then met my wife in Berlin, then it was sort of like we were trying to figure out where was next for us. And we were also just thinking about just what we liked about Berlin, for example, or other places we'd been versus others. And it was just, we moved from Berlin, which is a big, bustling international metropolis, to a small beach town outside of Porto. And now we live in downtown Porto after 2 years in this other city called Matosinhos. But it was just such a huge change. But it was great too. Like, we absolutely loved it. I mean,
Sure.
pretty much, 4 or 5 days a week, we just walk 20 minutes or so down to the boardwalk in front of the beach and just like walk down there and hang out and sit and enjoy that and come back. And it was just a very different, slow, comfortable lifestyle, and totally different from Tokyo or Berlin. So I think it's just also the changing of those times and what you're looking for. And I mean, I didn't think that I would be, if you had told me when I was living in Tokyo that I would be doing that in a handful of years later, I probably would have thought you were lying. So, it's just one of those things, I think, as well.
Yeah, especially after dealing with stuff like Shibuya all day, to go into like that
Mm-hmm.
lazy living, it's a very different lifestyle for sure. Well,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
funny. It's funny. I often have the same experience. I find that I keep myself busy enough as it is, so sometimes being in a slower place is just a helpful reminder. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll let you know. You'll be one of the first people to know when I find out where we're gonna live, and you and your wife are gonna have to come visit us, please. Uh,
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, if I mean, Japan's amazing. Like, just so many cool cities and so much to explore for such a small country. It's really incredible. But yeah, I think where you live will have a huge impact on your your
Yes.
lifestyle and what you'll be up
Yes.
to. But regardless, I'm sure it'll be a great experience.
David McNeill of Expat Empire, thank you for taking so much time to over the 3 weeks of the podcast on Aloma Peter and here in this live interview. I know we ran into some technical difficulties. We had some echo cancellation problems. We didn't have as many people
All
join
good.
as we would have liked, but hey, it was fun for me, and I always enjoyed talking to you. And if anybody wants to find David, you could find him at expatempire.com. You could also find him on Instagram at expatdavid and at expatempire. And I encourage you to do so. Just ask him a couple questions about, if you're even remotely interested in moving and living, working, or retiring abroad. He's the guy to get those wheels turning. So I appreciate you, man, and I hope that we can stay in touch and keep communicating in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me on the show, having me here today, and putting together this great event. And yeah, I mean, it's a learning experience for me as well, being on a live stream. So I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, I really wish you and your wife the best in Japan, and look forward to hearing where you're ending up and seeing how the adventures go for you. I'm sure you'll meet a lot of great people and have some wonderful experiences. So yeah, a little bit envious that you get to have the first time Japan experience, because those are some of the best times of my life. So definitely wish you
Yeah,
the best, and let's stay in touch.
please, and thank you. Yeah, and I already know my hiragana, so I'm getting close.
You're
But
a third of the way there.
not even really with all the
No.
kanji, but anyway. All right.